Welcome everyone, and today we continue with our series on the history of St. Joseph's Parish. Today we're pleased to welcome Simone and Joseph Maingot, and we're doing this video from their home. Welcome Joseph, welcome Simone, and thank you for agreeing to do this video.
Wonderful to be here.
So we initially start off by asking people, when did you start coming to St. Joe's? So Simone, when did you start coming?
Exactly the year I can never recall, but I came in the summer that Jerry Morris was coming in, and that summer, that Sunday when I first went, it was Fawn Quinn who was saying a mass, and I thought he was the parish priest, so I introduced myself. He said, no, I'm filling in, but come to the noon mass, that's when the show is good. so I did, and it was Jane Williams and the choir, of course.
Super.
Yes, that's, yeah.
And you, Joseph, when did you start coming?
Well, my parents were married in St. Joseph's in 1921, and it was in the 30s, mid-30s, when I was at school. I attended the French in Concarneau.
Mm-hmm.
We all went to a French school. And then so I was going to Concarneau, and so I went to Sacred Heart Church, and that's where I was baptized in St. Joseph's in 1931. And then my first communion was at Sacré-Cœur, because I was attending in Concarneau. And then it wasn't, I assume I was attending Sacré-Cœur because I was an altar boy there with a group of boys. And then it was, I guess, in 1945 was when I went on to St. Pat's College after Concarneau. So I imagine that was when I started going to St. Joseph's.
And why did you choose St. Joseph? Was there any particular reason?
Well, my family, my parents
Okay.
attended there, and St. Joseph became a very important cornerstone in my life.
Super. And Simone, why did you choose St. Joseph?
When we were attending a French parish, when we first came to Ottawa, it was 1969, and we lived in the West End for a year, so we went to Christ Roi Church, a small church. We were there 17 years, but things were changing. I didn't have white hair then, but it was a white-haired parish. That's right. But we stayed 17 years, so we moved on. And so we came to St. I don't know who directed us to St. Joseph, I cannot remember.
Okay.
But so that was, and of course at the time, then Robert joined the choir
Mm-hmm.
there. So it was an interesting time for us there. So.
And Robert was your first husband?
Yes, and he passed away in 1994. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Joseph, your parents were parishioners at St. Joe's, as you mentioned, but your father, Albert Joseph Maingot, was actively involved in the St. Vincent de Paul Society at St. Joe's. Would you describe what your father did?
With respect to St. Vincent de Paul, yes, I recall he would stand at the back of the church as you were leaving that would be the northeast corner. There'd be a stand with a little box on top, St. Vincent de Paul. He'd stand there and I guess inviting people to contribute. And actually it was after I'm not sure when it was exactly, I guess it was after my father perhaps passed away. I remember your brother Gary asked me to take it on.
Yes.
And so that involved more than just what my father said. I presume my father, the same as the Paul Society at that time, was busy doing the things that Simone and I did for St. Vincent de Paul.
Yeah.
And was he involved in distributing food or?
Yes.
No.
We were actually more. We invited people who from the parish who needed help, furniture and that sort of thing. And so they would invite us to go and assess what they required.
That's right. We visited.
Okay.
And then
that was the two of you.
The two.
Yes,
Oh
that's
yes, that's right. Yeah, visited, and then they give vouchers to the people to pick up, and then after that it stopped. I don't know what happened. This situation stopped, and we didn't join St. Philip was over for us.
I remember the St. Vincent de Paul, we used to give out vouchers to
That's
people.
right, yeah.
And they could go to the St. Vincent de Paul store to
That's
pick up
right.
furniture.
That's
Yes,
right, yes.
yes.
And what was your father, he was more actively involved in distributing food and that?
It seems to me he was involved in at Christmas time, perhaps more than that. But he was involved at Christmas time distributing food for those in need. Yes, I seem to recall
Okay,
something to that effect. Yes.
good. Now Simone, coming back to you.
Yes, I'm here.
You've been involved in a variety of ministries at St. Joe's, quite a few over the years.
Yes.
Would you share with us your experience with the supper table back in the 1980s?
I was there when the supper table was just a very small space. There were, I think, 4 benches, and we didn't really cook some soups, but we made sandwiches. We would come in the afternoon to make sandwiches. There was Josephine. Remember Josephine?
Yeah,
She was
Parish.
quite strict about what happened there. And her sister, somebody, well, I can't remember her name. But that was it. We came, made sandwiches, people came, ate, and left, and cleanup was quite fast. It was easy, so. But I have to say something that I've kept from that, the time I worked there. People would come, and sometimes they would talk, and they wouldn't. But I remember a man, he was particularly good looking. I noticed him. He would have been 40s or so, and he would come at the very last, never speak to anybody, have a sandwich, leave, never said thank you or hello, nothing. So one day I was cleaning up, everybody was gone. So I was just finishing up the clinic, and he called me. He said, Simone, and I knew he was French because, as I know, some people speak French the way they say my name. So I said, oh, I just spoke in French, of course. I said, you said my name? What is your name? And he said, Raphael. And I said, oh, wonderful. That's a beautiful, an angel's name. You have an angel's name. I can't believe the way this man just beamed, as if I'd said something very special. And he actually came over and hugged me and left. And I said, he came again, waited again, and I started a conversation. I said, so what do you do? Where do you work? And he said, I cannot work because I've got a dossier. I said, I'll pray for you, and he left. And I've never forgotten that man, and I still pray for him. It was a very moving moment for me, just for seeing him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now Simone, you were also a Eucharistic minister.
Yes, well.
Would you describe what this Eucharistic ministry does?
Yes, Jane Williams. I still got in that Jane Williams started to pull people around to make them work, you know that.
Oh, yes.
And so I became, what we did, we had a roster and a list. We had people knew when they had to come. And if they couldn't make it, they would call me, and we had the position. There was one person or other who really stuck to their position. Yes, didn't like to move. So no, he's gone now. Anyway, so that's the way it was for quite a while. And then, why did I stop being? Oh yes, I was having a lot of problem with eczema in my hands,
Okay.
which had been the story of my life. So I stopped, and then I moved on to something else.
Now, one of the things you moved on to was a bread maker. A bread maker.
Bread maker, that was
How
the
did you get
next.
involved in that activity?
No, I stopped. At some point 2 years ago, I had a stroke. Actually, I've had 2 mild strokes. And my sister, Cara, yeah, said, okay, it's enough. But then I moved on to coffee,
Okay.
selling coffee. Yeah, so that I quite enjoyed, selling coffee and chatting. I don't know, I used to order the coffee, and then, we sorted out the cupboard in the back that sometimes we couldn't open at all, a terrible cupboard. And then the COVID happened, and that was the end of that. But the coffee was fair trade, And this, the reason I got involved in the fair trade, I know now, because of development and peace.
Yes.
Because I've been active in development and peace for years on the French side, a long, long, long time ago. And so that's what it was, selling fair trade for development and peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I don't go to church hardly anymore.
Yeah. Because of COVID.
Yes, and I have to certain issues also.
I know many times people refer to you as the coffee lady
The
at the back
coffee
of the church.
Yeah, yes. And I had a little fellow, George Hef's grandson. He insisted on helping me. Okay? So he'd walk around and pull everything out and he couldn't read. Eventually he learned to read, so he classified the coffee. Yeah, so, and I gave him the keys to open the cupboard. That was special. So I missed this little fellow.
Yeah.
Andre was his name. Yeah.
Now, Joseph, going back some years, you were a member of the mixed choir at St. Joe's back in 1950.
Yes.
Would you share with us some of your thoughts about the choir at that time?
Well, I recall that we were large in number, and Father Conan
Yes.
was our director. And this was, I'm not sure at what point this, because in 1947, it was the Marian Congress, and Father Conan was active there on behalf of the church as a communicator.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure when I actually started the choir, but it was very large. One of the things I recall, or two things, is the person who was the organist. He was a little person. His name escapes me, but I recall when we would be playing Seven Last Words of Christ, and there was a moment there when it was very hectic. And he'd be jumping, we were quite excited, and but I recall that we were all quite young people, and my sister was involved in it.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I knew very well. A lot of them were involved in the CYO, which I really was not involved. But I don't recall too much apart from attending concerts and singing and enjoying that. But the practices, probably at night, some night during the evening. But it was a wonderful occasion for me, and it was 1950, 51, and then 52. In July, I left, went away, didn't come back till November. Then the following March, I went away again. So that was probably the end of my time with the choir, but I enjoyed it immensely, yes.
Yeah, back in 1950-51, St. Joe's had about 5,000 people as part of its parish. And the church was packed at that time because the church would actually hold 1,100 people. And so they were rushing people in and rushing people out. But as you say, that choir was huge.
It was a very large, the picture shows the number of people, quite numerous. And I'm calling attending Mass here, but on Sundays, you usually recall that when high school, we'd be in the choir loft.
Yep.
Attending Mass there. I can still recall the events of the missions during Lent, I guess, when the Redemptorists or somebody hurling brimstone on it during the course of these missions. And the church was full. The church was full. And I recall also other things I read. I'm not sure when the occasion was, whether it was Easter or different times of the month. With confessions, there'd be line up for confessions.
Yeah, oh yes.
Yes.
It was very popular back then.
Yeah.
It's a requirement.
Yes.
Now, Joseph, you're involved with the parish council back in 1988 to 1991. And Simone, you were in the parish council in 1994.
Yes, when Brian Primo.
Yes, when he was our pastor.
That's right, that's when I was.
So what were your thoughts about parish council then? Why did you choose it?
Yes, I'm not sure whether I was elected or invited to attend in the absence of someone. Probably the latter, but I recall attending, sending out the St. Joseph's, what's the expression? Raison d'être, eh?
Okay.
I remember going to, I think we might have gone to Iron Park for that. We were meetings to deliberate and talk about that, and it made me more involved in the church, in St. Joseph's Church. And so that was not a long time at it, but it was something I enjoyed very much indeed. I met the people. I saw the people there. Wayne, I think Wayne is one of the persons that's on the board with me. And of course Jane was a part of it, and I remember I one time I objected to it. I suggested to Jane, I remember, we're not reciting the creed anymore, and she said, we talk about during the Mass, so I took exception to that.
Now, Simon, what about yourself, your experience?
I was invited. I don't know by whom, but I went. I mostly listened. I didn't seem to have too much to say. And but then I was asked I was in charge to find new members, to phone around to recruit new members. Well, I worked very hard at that. I wasn't getting too many answers. Eventually it did. And René and yeah, that's her name. Okay, so I finally got somebody, and then René gave me a bouquet of red roses for trying very hard. So that's what I got out of Parish Council, not too much contribution, but I remember, I can't remember the name of this person who was ill, and it was his last, we didn't know it was his last Parish Council, but I remember just leaving, it had this feeling that he wasn't coming back. I wish I could remember his name, and he passed away shortly after that.
Was that the priest?
No, not the priest, no, a person on the Parish Council.
Okay.
But I cannot remember his name for the world. No, but Brian Primo left quite shortly after, very, very quickly, so, yeah.
You both were involved in renewing our spiritual home back in 1998, 97, 98, the fundraising campaign for the church.
Yes.
So, how did you find that? Were parishioners receptive to contributing to the renewal of the church?
I remember going to McDonald. I was going to say Flora McDonald. No, Carol McDonald. To their place, we gathered there, and I don't really recall going to many other places, but we did get, people did contribute to whoever we contacted, but how much I can't tell you, I don't really remember, and besides, we wouldn't say what names anyway, so, but I don't remember. So, but it was something that got involved in, it was interesting, and we followed all the changes.
Joseph, any thoughts?
Well, it's certainly worthwhile what we have now. It was, I remember being sort of embarrassed, asking people for money, you know.
Yeah.
But we were well received, very well received. There weren't too many households that we attended, but we were very well received. And the fact that we were asked to do that was
nobody loved that.
Flattered.
I was involved as well, and we had actually raised $670,000 by the time the committee was coming to an end. And at our final meeting, because it was Maureen McIntyre who was leading the fundraising for the church, we presented Maureen with 67 roses, a rose for every $10,000 that was raised. But the final number was actually $720,000 we raised. So it was quite the contribution to the church, and it was, people gave over a period of 10 years. So it was
I think they're still giving now, because whatever was being contributed at that time is still coming out of my account, which is fine with me.
So as we come to the end of our interview, do you have any final thoughts you want to share about your experience, your feelings about St. Joe's?
Well, what I enjoyed very much was the children's liturgy.
Yes.
That I really loved being with the children. I recall Carol McDonald's two sons, Peter and Peter with a wonderful name, you know, and God, our Lord, provided him to be the first leader. So I enjoyed that very much, and I recall we would be called out necessary, then we would come out with the children. And then at the end, I remember your brother Garrett went, Joe, it's time to go back, you know.
Yeah.
That was a very wonderful time, because it was something that, and actually it's a learning process too, because I would never be a big reader of liturgical, and I've become, since now that I have time,
Yep.
and now we're near the end, maybe that's natural, but it was a learning process for me.
Yep.
A learning process, and a wonderful process, because being with people that you enjoy, children, you know, it really was an enjoyable time.
And you just never know what they're going to say.
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely, yes.
And Simone, what are your thoughts?
Because I came in, and as I said, I was told to come when the show was good, and I never left with the choir. I was involved, I wasn't, but I had this wonderful, the first Mass, I think, I heard the choir sing, "You remember whom you loved us." That got me, and I could never leave after that.
Yep.
That song just spoke to me. It was wonderful. We don't hear it very much anymore, I don't think. Mind you, for 2 years now things have been different, but that really got me. And this vision of Jen Williams standing there, you know, and bringing everybody to sing, you know,
Yeah.
with a big smile. And I say Jen Williams had a big influence on me.
Yeah.
She was, I don't think many people knew her she was quite stern and quite, you know, things worked with Jen.
Yeah.
But she had a very, very big, generous heart, which I'm not sure everybody knows. So this Jane to me was very, very special. And I think she had left did a lot for St. Joseph.
She did.
Oh
Very much
yes,
so.
she had to be remembered, yes.
Well, someone mentioned Von Quinn. Well, Von Quinn and I were at Ottawa together. And actually, I attended his ordination in Montreal. And it so happens that my mother, who was a friend of his mother, yes. But a little story, St. Joseph's in the past, there were a lot of priests, and a lot of them came from Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother tells a story, this one priest who had gone back to Ireland, came back, and he was, on some occasion, whether it was on the occasion of a homily or what have you, he said, you know, they say that the Irish are dirty a lot, but it's a dirt that can be washed off. Maybe Irishmen didn't always keen on that, but this is one of the stories of my mother.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for sharing your perspective on St. Joe's and your stories. And thank you for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much.
I like telling stories. And that was a good time to do so.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.